Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Hello, everyone. I think we can start. Thank you very much for joining our session on Nuclear Horizons, the Future of Atom. My name is Viktorya Muradyan. I'm going to be the moderator for the session. This panel is organized in the scope of the European Liberal Forum Hub. European Liberal Forum is one of the partners of the Freedom Games. We are a Brussels-based think tank and political foundation of European liberals with a big network of organizations, 57 members from all the European countries, including from Poland. Today we are going to talk about the future of European energy. At the moment we are experiencing increasing energy demands on the continent. At the same time we see that there's a pressing need to reduce our dependence from fossil fuels because they are environmentally detrimental and geopolitically very prone to disruptions. And as we're seeking to decarbonize, nuclear energy is appearing over and over again in different discussions as an alternative source for more sustainable solution that will also allow us to be more autonomous with that energy security. And in our current architecture, we are very much dependent on not only on very specific countries and supply chains, but also we still haven't managed to diversify. So today we're going to talk about nuclear energy with two very, I would say, informed experts on the topic. The first one is Tomoho Umeda, to my left. He's the founder of Hynfra and Hynfra Energy Storage. He's an advisor, a supporter of renewable energy solutions, an expert in hydrogen. He chairs the Hydrogen Technology Committee at the National Chamber of Commerce and the president of Hydrogen Poland Association and a member of Hydrogen Europe. So apparently he also works for the Chamber of Commerce that is working on nuclear solutions in Poland. So he knows a lot about the topic. And to his left, we have Anna Kornecka, who is a former Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Labor and Technology. And she has been responsible for distributed energy and onshore wind in Poland. She used to work for a Clean Poland Program Association, which is an investor in the nuclear plant in Poland, in the Wielkopolska region, if I'm not mistaken. And also she is the originator of the co-author of a report, which is called the Decalogue on Poland's Energy Security and Transition. So a round of applause for our speakers. And let's start from the beginning, actually. Let's figure out why nuclear energy has been such an divisive topic for Europe for the longest of time. Tomoho?
Czy ktoś mówi po angielsku tutaj i rozumie? Czy będę mówił po polsku w takim razie?
Let me speak in Polish, as I can't see people understand English. Now, answering your question, I think we need to think about nuclear energy from kind of upside down, what nuclear energy is for. Now we are talking about 3 reactors in Choczewo, each one 1,000 megawatts. So these reactors are supposed to play a systemic role, so decarbonize part of the energy mix while preserving system stability, but obviously we need to remember that all 3 reactors will provide about 26 terawatt hours of energy, while the entire electrical system is 175 terawatt hours. So it's not salvation for the entire system. So we should emphasize that. Now, carbon is responsible for more than 100 terawatt hours. And obviously the reduction of carbon is a great achievement as we talk about nuclear energy, but our ambitions and also European regulations are even greater. So from my point of view, nuclear energy is an attempt to save face. We are attempting to implement it, but its role in decarbonization is a different issue. But obviously decarbonization, energy transformation is a process that must proceed very quickly. It's not regulations that have horizons of 2035, 40, 50. Now Anna is here a specialist, but the taxonomy, ESG, and so on and so forth, the Polish companies will have an obligation to report on how they decarbonize, and this obligation comes into force next year. And they need to show that they use green energy. So I think nuclear energy will not be very helpful. It's not a silver bullet, which doesn't change the fact that nuclear energy is necessary. Perhaps in the future it will not be centralized, perhaps it will be distributed based on more modern technologies like high temperature technologies such as solid fuel and liquid fuel reactors. So if they produce not only energy, electrical energy, but also so much heat, than 700 degrees Celsius. So hydrogen can be generated without electricity in thermochemical processes. So this is a holy grail. Run around the world is looking for ways in which, I'm not talking about SMRs. No, SMRs are still water reactors and not appropriate for hydrogen production. Right now in Poland we have one project in Świdnik and NCJ, but while hydrogen and nuclear energy are combined, I'll tell you next round.
The source of energy.
Okej, dzień dobry Państwu. No to tak patrząc na to.
So, good afternoon. Well, what could I add to what Tomoho said? We are dealing with nuclear. We talk about it because it constitutes a rather large component of energy systems in many countries. I don't know if you thought about it, why Poland doesn't have any nuclear reactors up till now, while we are largely dependent on fossil fuels. Well, this subject is indeed very, very hot, and we must say that we are a white spot on the map of the European Union, especially the peripheries, Czech Republic, Slovakia. For example, they already have nuclear energy. So a substantial proportion of their energy comes from nuclear. Now, once we look at nuclear energy, now, why are we motivated to invest in nuclear? Well, that's because of the EU taxonomy. Nuclear energy, together with renewable energy sources, is deemed a green source. It's perhaps a large simplification, because whether something's green or not may be controversial, but nuclear is deemed sustainable. So any projects based on nuclear energy will be considered taxonomical, so they can be financed. And obviously, financing is crucial to such projects. But, when we look at time horizons, as Tomoho mentioned, the financial horizons, as we aim at the sustainable development of industry, business, as well as local administration in countries, nuclear energy will not really play a significant role in the horizon of the coming 6 to 8 years. And in terms of large projects, the time horizon is very, very distant. And I'm not even talking here about the cost horizon. So, of course, we have a number of projects that are being implemented, but we must not forget about the other components of the energy system. And they are really necessary for the Polish industry.
The fact that it has been labeled as a green energy source, I think 2 years ago there was a big discussion and not everyone agreed with that. So I would like you to elaborate in terms of sustainability, what makes nuclear energy a more sustainable source compared to the other ones? Maybe Tomoho, you can start and Anna can continue.
Znaczy, no oczywiście, że energia
Well, obviously, nuclear energy is neither sustainable nor renewable. It's zero emission, and that's the aspect which is important in this case, because in order to understand the scale of the task that we are facing when it comes to decarbonization, we must become aware of the fact that it's not only electricity and power generation that needs to become decarbonized, but there is also the heating system that is and transport. So it's over 1,200 terawatt hours. So that's decarbonization covers it all, not just the generation of electricity. So if we take 1,000 terawatt hours and compare to 200 terawatt hours, it doesn't really, it does change the picture. Well, for the power generation system, it also doesn't have real importance. But when you get the heating industry, so atom is becoming a kind of adhesive that will help us move on with technologies that the Chinese are using. In 2029, for example, there will be a reactor for melted salt. It takes fuel, which is liquid, and you can add to it all sorts of used nuclear material from old water nuclear power stations, because in water nuclear power stations, that is the ones that we'll be having, for example, in Choczewo, after 5% of nuclear material is used up, the fuel is considered used up completely. So 95% is taken to the bunker underground and for 1,000 years. But you can take it to put into this new reactor, and then at the same time, decomposition times is reduced to 100 years. And then we could say that this is maybe not renewable, but sustainable. That's how I would understand it. We are looking at China. They will do it in a moment. Well, I'm sorry because I've taken too much of time. No, but I'm not sure whether how much of it has come in interpretation because there was a lot of data. But we must say that we consider sustainable things that we decide are sustainable. Tomoho used a word which I'm fighting against very much because he said zero emission. Zero emission is a very bad translation from English, net zero. There is nothing like zero emission source of energy, zero emission bus, zero emission building. Everything emits different things. Well, a human being is probably the closest to zero emission, but we don't want to be zero emission. We want to reduce our emissions to become them absorbable by our natural environment. And this is what sustainable development is about, because it should take into account, and I mainly focus on environmental aspects because this is where we are speaking about green energy. Social issues are also important. For nuclear energy, well, in nuclear energy we'll address them, I'm sure, social issues, but environmental aspects are of primary importance. So when we say that taxonomy decided that nuclear energy generation is considered green energy, it's only because the member states agreed on that, because they decided that they were not in a position to eliminate from their energy systems this element by eliminating fossil fuels, because decarbonization has already been decided. So all the EU member states, not only the EU member states, want to eliminate fossil fuels and are striving to eliminate fossil fuels, but we are not 100% consistent in what we consider a green source of energy or not. This is a kind of agreement between us that we've decided that this will be sustainable or not.
Because that would also ensure that there are enough financial investment and funds coming to the direction of nuclear energy.
Trochę tak.
Yes, this political aspect is to dictate the directions for development. So we support the direction in which we see that well, it was nice. Well, Tomoho presented these sectors, but these sectors intertwine and permeate. Well, not in Poland, but this traditional division into sectors is now blurred. We can't say the energy sector right now, because energy-related projects, also probably small nuclear reactors, become parts of all businesses and industries. Usually these are small photovoltaic projects or wind energy projects, but we have this small nuclear.
Such a political decision 10 years ago would be impossible, because the nuclear energy didn't have as much support as it used to have in terms of within public. And I think we see that more and more in different European countries. The resistance against development of nuclear energy is dropping, and people are more supportive of that. What do you think is the reason? Is it because the war in Ukraine showed us the vulnerabilities of our energy security, or because people, kind of politicians and governments, are increasingly normalizing having nuclear energy in the regular energy mix?
No tak, są takie dwa główne czynniki.
There are two major cost factors in production: the cost of labor and the cost of energy. The problem is that in Europe, the cost of energy has become disproportionately higher compared to China, for example, or well, we can speak about climate, zero emission, and so on, but at the bottom of it, there is always politics, business, and economics, and the fight for preserving some economic growth in the European Union. Well, we are working towards the reduction of the cost of energy and pure energy. Pure energy, now, that sounds terrible. Well, zero emission energy. Now, well, the renewable, well, energy that comes from renewables. Of course, we know that it's not pure, but that's how we describe it. Well, we can't be really very distinctive. Well, low emission, zero emission. Well, just to simplify, we say zero emission and emission. Of course, Anya is correct, but that's not that simple. So if we have renewable energy, well, what renewable energy is about? So first we after some time, after making an investment, after some time, we don't pay for sun, we don't pay for the wind, we pay only for the maintenance costs, which are rather low. So when it is all decapitalized, it's for free. Well, it's similar with the nuclear energy, because well, nuclear energy, when you build it, the initial investment is very, very high, so it's very costly for 10 years, but then for the next 40 years it's rather cheap, relatively cheap. So if we look from the point of view of the government, or from the point of view of people who work in different places in Poland or in Europe, in any industry, that will not work if we can't compete with the price of energy, because labor cost, as digital transformation continues, labor cost is not so important, because energy cost in the long run will be the main factor that will decide whether it's more, whether it's cheaper to import something from China or from Far East or from Africa. So this is the overarching value. Well, it's not climate. Well, climate is important, but if that were climate only, it wouldn't be so. It wouldn't be so difficult.
That's a question, but before, so basically, let's talk about why there has been an increasing support among people and citizens. And also the second kind of aspect of that is, I think there's a lot of misconception about nuclear energy due to the trauma that that a lot of Europeans have about, the history, but also a lot of lack of education and ignorance and misinformation about the topic. So how you can think it's objectively fair to make people more aware of the real benefits and risks of nuclear energy through education?
Well, I think where to start, but of course there is a lot of misinformation or disinformation that is very easily disseminated in in our society, which until the aggression of Russia in Ukraine was not even contemplating nuclear energy. Well, that was a subject for experts who were taking part in conferences and alarming about the energy condition of our energy system, but people were not interested in it. So the first piece of information that is a lie which has been repeating and which was repeated between 2022, that there is something like Polish coal, and this is our strategic good which meets all our needs. I think that after the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, people, quite large proportion of the people, have got aware that this is not true. I have no doubts that nuclear projects in Poland were blocked by the coal lobby. I'm not going to give the names of people, but this is the main reason why such projects that had been planned for many years, we have been discussing that for many years, couldn't get above the planning stage. Tomoho sketched the scope of the problem. This will not be a gigantic change, but at the back of our heads we have something that we should have something that will be working within the energy generation system, and that is not dependent on weather. Well, we think that our sources of energy are weather dependent. Well, they used to be called unstable, so we need to have something that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all year round.
Maybe it's coming a bit late, but particularly with the climate change, because we cannot have any more reliance on weather. Maybe it's fluctuating. We see different anomalies in different parts of Europe.
Ale jeszcze skończę.
Yes, but yeah, that also changes because we invest in something like energy warehouses. So these energy warehouses will respond to our questions as to how we can accumulate, or we can get this stabilization, so how we can accumulate energy. Because I often hear that we need to design the system and decide how much renewables, how much gas, how much nuclear energy. That also changes. I often say, and this is a term that I coined myself, and I think this is a right description. Well, energy generation is democratizing right now. So the state doesn't have full control on how much renewable energy we will have in the system. It depends on the investor, how much how much power they will hook in or input into the system. That happens, that it is a kind of bottom-up change. Apart from this big project, this nuclear project, small reactors will also be working like that. They will be distributed, decentralized. So that's also, so out of this cake that was held by the government, by the central government, by the state, they have to cut out something or leave out a proportion of it out and get it out of their control. This seems like a good idea because this will be distributed and probably more difficult to damage or to take control of, but we must bear in mind that the reality changes really dynamically. It has changed quite dynamically over the last decade. So it's worth for the people responsible for our energy generation, it's worth for them to remember that they shouldn't focus on percentage of the mix in energy, but focus on the priorities of our energy policy. What are we developing? Offshore, nuclear energy, other projects, doesn't matter what, but we need to focus on what depends on the state, on the central government, and where financial support and funding should be directed.
Their power plant and how it is in kind of a big deal for Poland. The government has invested 14 billion euros within till 2030 actually in this plan, but it's only 30% of the overall funding and required investment, and the rest coming from the US. What do you think about this? Do you think it is wise to have, first of all, like there needs to be a balance between foreign investment and security and sovereignty. What does it tell you to have 70% of the funding coming from across the Atlantic?
No tak, rzeczywiście będą dość drogie reaktory. Ja się cieszę, bo wiecie, bo tutaj, jak mnie tutaj Viktorya przedstawiała, to też mówiła, że mam taką spółkę Hynfra Energy.
Right now, we have a hydro energy storage company, and we have 1 gigawatt of energy, but it's not really much because in Poland it's 24 gigawatts. I'm waiting for nuclear energy because it's so expensive that within the first 10 years, this amortization will make it extremely expensive, and energy storage makes money by charging the storage when the sun is shining and when the energy is cheap, and returns the energy in the evening when energy is more expensive, when people is using carbon energy. And myself as owner, let's say, or the operator of energy storage facility, I'm going to make money on it. So for me, the role of nuclear energy for myself is marginal. But I'd like to speak to what Anna mentioned. Indeed, the idea of creating of subsystems, the balanced subsystems. So right now we have a grid that has great production powers around Poland that's connected by grids and including distribution networks. So first of all, the important thing is that the transfer networks, we cannot really increase their capacity. So realistic amount is 200 terawatt hours. Right now we have 175. It's a science fiction scenario is 250 terawatt hours of, but some, let's say, a total dream is 500 terawatt hours, as long as we use super modern technology. Now this is not going to happen, and that would cost to 20 billion. So it's not really possible to strengthen transfer network. It's to make sure it takes care of everything that we've mentioned before, including heat energy and transport energy and so forth.
In Polish nuclear plant, because you're diplomatically avoiding my question, Tomoho. What do you think about having foreign investment in our European key energy infrastructure?
To nie ma żadnego znaczenia.
Huh?
To nie ma żadnego znaczenia.
It doesn't really matter at all.
One question. Today it's US, a reliable ally
Yes.
of Poland. Russia, and we see in the case of Hungary that Russia is actually helping Viktor Orban to revitalize their nuclear power plant, and Rosatom has major interest in that. So of course it's okay in the case of the US because they are an ally. What about in the case of Russia? What if there is a conflict between NATO member countries and Russia in 20, 30 years from now, and Russia utilizes its power over the nuclear plant?
Chyba się nie obawiamy takiego scenariusza, że nagle zrezygnujemy z przyjaźni.
I don't think we're not afraid of a scenario where we give up America for Russia. It's perhaps you can imagine there's anything can be imagined, but it's not the case that when the United States finances, let's say, the nuclear power plant, we will be forever reliable on them. It's a press a red button and they turn it off. Okay, even if they do that, okay, so that they want to build something to make money. They have a business plan for 40 years ahead. they envision how to use the money over that time horizon.
Ale to też nie tylko środki pieniężne, ale też
It's not only money, it's also know-how, experience, technology. We don't have it here, so in terms of nuclear energy, we have to import it. Of course, we have some science and technology, but we don't have experience in this branch of energy sector. And I'd like to add to what Tomoho said. Across our economy, we have a tendency to electrify it. Of course, this helps us to achieve net zero emissions, but it also increases the demand for electrical energy tremendously. Now we talk about saving energy. Yes, that is true. It is very sustainable. It is also very cheap. As we say that the cheapest energy is energy saved, not used. But the industry that has always been the industry that has always been called energy intensive, it will need ever more energy, transportation, more energy. I'm just talking about energy, electrical energy in general. So our energy system that Tomoho has nicely described, it cannot bear this burden. And if not for any other reason, then for this reason, our energy system needs to be deconcentrated and must be distributed. And in terms of our involvement, let's say the United States or Russia, first and foremost, we are in talks. We conduct investments together with countries that share values. In our case, it's democracy and the rule of law. So our partners could be the Americans or the French, but not the Russians. Obviously, there is controversy in terms of other business partners, but given that we're dependent on fossil fuels, or when you drive your car, traditional car, let's say with a combustion engine, who do we support using a car? If you think about it, it's whether in electric cars, net zero, or perhaps we will be dependent on other countries. Yes, we will be, but also today we are dependent on other countries, and we can consider whether the country we are dependent on really has the same, shares the same values that we do, as long as we really share democracy and the rule of law values. Now, I want to be politically correct to that extent, of course. It's not necessarily a choice that we choose Westinghouse. It's the best possible technology in the United States. It's benevolent, of course. No, there is some, let's say, position of power there. Okay, it's not that we can say we don't want Westinghouse, or we want to choose the French or the Koreans. It's not because our country is being conquered, but it's just a larger political deal. And therefore, irrespective of their law and justice or civic platform is in the power, everybody sticks to that partnership that has been struck due to this project. As I say, this project will not be critical, even if it disappears or explodes. Hopefully not, but if it's turned off, or if we are, let's say, blackmailed with the absence of fuel, it doesn't really matter that much whether the reactors are turned off. If we have another reactor from the French and more reactors, then we can achieve some diversification. So I'm not worried that in 30 years' time the United States will become a hostile country and they will turn off our power plant, and then we will regret the fact that we cannot take or obtain reactors from our great friends, the Russians.
To follow up on 2 points that you have raised. The first one is about actually attracting investment. The public and private partnerships are a big part of getting the investment for necessary big infrastructure projects. And what do you think we can do better in Europe to attract and to create public-private partnerships between European companies and investors? How to make, for example, a Norwegian organization invest in Poland, the French one invest in Hungary, and what is the role of government in all of that?
Jest takie słowo klucz, którego używamy jak
We use some buzzwords when we go abroad. We talk about locating new energy sources, green energy. And it's not a problem with Poland, with every country. It's permitting. So anything that blocks the development of investment in all areas, but in particular renewable energy, nuclear energy, all projects must follow the same path. There is no separate path of permitting that would be simplified. Or, for example, we don't have a specialized team that would make decisions quickly and efficiently, but across the European Union, the problem is similar to varying degrees. Now, in Poland, we have a lot of barriers. Now, I deal with investment law. There is a ruler of investment proceedings. In Poland, it's let's say, on average 200 days. So in some cases, it takes much more time. In some cases, shorter if the investment is very short. So why the partnership? No, in addition to the psychological aspect, let's say the country is involved in the project, this partnership fulfills the role. I don't know how to call it, but it's a simplifier of procedures. So the officials may take decisions faster. And then officials are more trusty. They believe that if a public partner is involved, then there won't be any abuse. Our administration is heavily underfunded, and the officials are clever. If they have good skills, they usually leave the offices after a few years, and new people come. And for example, I am a professional coach for a public administration in Poland, and I do realize that how difficult it has been for me to teach officials, members of the administration, to figure out how to make good decisions quickly based on the provisions of the law. So we have a great deficit in this area, great work to be done. We do not like special acts of law, but these dedicated acts of law mean that we prepare fast tracks. And in terms of decarbonization, the development of renewable energy projects and the nuclear energy project is a must-have. Sorry, I'd like to add one thing. As In the European Union, we think we are in the vanguard of decarbonization. We complain that the European Commission is overzealous. It's not true. The European Union right now, globally speaking, is towards the end. Of course, there's Russia and some African countries perhaps, but China is decarbonizing the fastest pace. The number of renewable sources opened every year in China equals the combined output of renewable energy across the world, and they declared that in the 1930s their whole economy will be powered from renewable energy sources. Well, it's perhaps PR, but they don't want to have any barriers in their exports to the European Union. Now, the United States, they have a Reduction Act that accelerated investment in the Near East. That's incredible what they are doing. They're building huge installations. It's so expensive. Let's say first project in Nyon, 8 billion and 21 banks after 10 years. Green ammonia to Rotterdam. It's crazy. India last year, $350 billion over 5 years for decarbonization via state-owned companies. Africa, North Africa, Egypt, Jordan, Oman, the Arab Peninsula. There is no industrial region that wouldn't be more advanced. Mauritania, the most modern law in the world. In the EU, we have launched some ideas, European Hydrogen Bank, then we create barriers and we steer a change via aid measures. But what has been said by Anya, the key thing is we need to understand that it's not the state that will decarbonize us. We need to decarbonize ourselves. It's a bottom-up process.
Down.
But the funds are distributed top-down, so they most probably will not meet. And also these assistance funds are not sufficient for making this change universal, because it's not for one company, but for all of us as we sit here, all our workplaces, all local authorities, everything. So these instruments that today are used by the EU are ineffective compared to what's going on in all these regions that I have just mentioned.
My side, and then I will open the floor for the questions from the audience. We talked about the EU in a way, the instruments being ineffective, and also one part of that is the lack of know-how that Anna mentioned before. And we do a lot of investment in research and development, and it's going to increase, I think, in the next years to come. But do you think that nuclear so far has been prioritized as a research and development area, or what is going to change with the next commission or in the next mandate? I mean, it's not random that Russia's nuclear sector has been the only one of the few non-sanctioned industries since 2022. I think that also leaves a little bit of space for exchange with their know-how.
I feel I need to say something, because when we speak about Russia, we have Putin's Russia in mind. Of course, we cannot exclude a situation when this geopolitical situation will slightly change, so we can't demonize the subject for ages, because it may change relatively quickly. I believe that at the declarative level, a lot has been said. That is the European Green Deal or REPowerEU, all these official European politics of these official European policies are very decisive, very concrete, but they haven't been transposed to the local level. There is not enough understanding about the potential that is there in the diverse countries. I can remember a conference where the Prime Minister of the Netherlands came and he said that it was completely unbelievable that you have such a big country, huge possibilities when it comes to energy generation, and you are not using that in any way. The Netherlands, a small country, we can't get more of that because we have almost taken up all of our potential. But what we envy you is your geographical location, your potential, and to him, it was unbelievable that we were not using this potential that we have. So looking from the continental perspective, in Europe there is a lot of potential, intellectual potential, but also business potential, economic potential, industrial potential. But also, on the other hand, we have to know what we are able to do, because China, that has just been mentioned, a lot is going on in its economy, but they have huge economy. Well, we can't compare Poland to China or Europe to China. These continents or countries, they compete with each other. This is a race between the United States and China, and we aspire to show our competitive advantages, and they are unquestionable. But it's worth to proceed from words to deeds, and that's our big problem in Europe. We don't have agency. Well, a few.
Are there any questions before we do go to the closing remarks? I think we have one or two question opportunity here. Sven, there. And there, yes. Can you present yourself and also address one of the panelists?
My name is Sven. Hi, and I think a lot about the green future and like how nuclear is perceived. And so my question to you, I guess both of you, is. Does it work? Okay, I do it again. So a question to both of you is about the kind of perception of nuclear, and maybe it is linked to one country in the European Union, namely my home country, Germany. And what role did the German energy transition play in the perception of how nuclear energy is now perceived in the world? Because we were wrecked by our energy policy.
Second question, let's take, and then let's take the second question as well, and then we'll answer both of them because we have 4 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I think you can start answering.
Yes,
I will.
Let's go.
I will speak in English. Or you have translation? Okay. To mówię po polsku.
Okay, so I'll speak Polish. I believe, energy vendor and energy strategy of Germany is something that is worth studying. We can see how much it was linked with this transition period based on hydrocarbons from Russia. Well, I have my private observation that if Russia was able to convince many Brits to Brexit, why shouldn't it convince Germans to give up nuclear energy? It's not. We are not living in a sovereign information circles or environments where we are resilient to this information, and that happens. That happens also for China in the direction of India. Or Turkey, or in Russia, it's been going on for years. I myself came across that when the Russia fertilizers industry was trying to exercise a hostile takeover of the Polish fertilizer industry. They, through different narratives, the interests of different countries are presented. That goes both ways, or in any ways. I'm not sure today to what extent our strive for decarbonization is or is not supported or funded by China. Well, I'm getting a bit paranoid, but we can't forget it. So it's worth being very realistic. So energy independence, energy security, energy self-sufficiency, that's the key. This is the just transition. This is what makes this energy sector more democratic. If we adopt this paradigm, everything becomes simpler. Well, to reduce this paranoid approach, we can see that we can see it in EU policies addressed to photovoltaics. It's very clear that countries which offer better conditions for the growth of photovoltaic sector, they promote and lobby for getting facilitation, incentives for the growth of this sector. We have to be aware of that every time someone will be more or less interested in carrying out particular projects or investment projects. Well, my name is Michał Stolarczyk. Two short questions. The first...
Okej, dobrze, to w takim razie...
Okay. So I slightly disagree with what we've heard, that this private-public partnership is better. It's preferred, let's say. Well, it's preferred. But on the other hand, I heard the CEO of Ireland, Synthos Green Energy, who said that because of political problems, this small reactors program was stopped. It didn't happen for political reasons, but because the idea of this business was questioned by our agency of our internal security agency. It has nothing to do with private-public partnership or business. So maybe easier access to funding for smaller projects for taxonomy reasons would be a better solution without the need of political impact. I'm not sure whether we've highlighted that enough, but some of these projects, they can do very well on their own, also at financial level. For many projects, there are no problems with funding, but risk lies on the side of administrative and legal decisions, because investors cannot be sure whether this investment project will be carried out. And a political risk, perhaps somebody will the next day come and say, oh, well, we don't like it, or some other party will say it's not, we don't like it, so we'll not be doing. Of course, we need to have adequate strategies in which we have all these projects, because if you have development strategies with these projects will be delivered, at least theoretically.
To join Anna and Tomoho after the session and ask your second question as well. Just wanted to say thank you very much for being here for the questions, and please feel free to join the European Liberal Forum booth area. We have a lot of books and publications, and I'm happy to chat about the topic further. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Dziś Nowy Jork, jutro Londyn. Za chwilę Paryż, Warszawa, Berlin. Na całym świecie kultura pulsuje rytmem. Wystarczy tylko włączyć dwójkę. Dwójka, Polskie Radio. Jesteś na miejscu.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
It's not always easy to recognize. It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people. But for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Jedzą kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarzy telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Przygotowanie ofiar dla pedofilów. Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.